So before we go into the agenda, I'd just like to begin with acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all gather today. We pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge the first people as the first scientists, educators, and healers. So this is the agenda for today's meeting. So it's quite a jam-packed agenda that we have here. So we'll start with our usual business and updates, and then we'll go into the report back from Heath on the IPS project calls. So the last two IPS project calls. Then we'll move on to again Heath and Marvin, who will provide us with a report back from the face-to-face co-design Spark TDG workshop in Canberra a couple of weeks ago. Then Lucy will provide us with a PS Patient Summary R1 ballot update, and then she will take us through the maturity model discussion for the Australian Patient Summary, so AFMM. After that, we'll have a discussion about Patient Summary change requests. So these are the three ones that you can see here that we'll be speaking about, and then, as always, we'll finalize with an overview of next steps. So I'll start with the approval the minutes from the previous meeting. So I won't put them up here on the screen unless someone wants me to, but I'm just going to take them as read, and I would like to submit a motion to have them approved, please. And if I could have a seconded, that would be great.
So moved.
Sorry, who is that?
Stephen, move to approve.
Okay, thank you. So let me.
I'll second.
Yeah, I just realized I can't do that, so I'm chairing. So yeah, thanks, Lucy, and thanks, Stephen. My brain is still firing off. So let me just launch the poll, which will. Okay. Just a second. All squeeze approval of. Yep. Okay. If you're not able to vote, please drop your vote in the chat, and we'll count it towards the final numbers. All right, numbers are still coming through. I'd give it a few more seconds before we close this one off. Okay, so they seem to have stopped now. So I'll end the poll, count the results. So we have 6 affirmative votes and 10 abstain, which means the motion has passed. Thank you. Okay, let me just close this off. All right. Now that we have that out of the way, we'll move into updates and news. So the first one, let me just get this on the screen. So the first one, yep. Do you want to talk to that?
Sorry, Ricardo. I was just going to say I can provide an update on that. Yep. So this was really poll for the December meeting date, because it was initially booked for the 12th of December, which is right after Connectathon. So we were voting on keeping the 12th of December or moving to the 19th. Most people selected 19th of December, so we'll hold the meeting then. You should all have an invite for the 19th. I sent that out the other day the original invite, excuse me, for the 12th of December is still there. It was sent out by Danielle, so I can't really cancel it. But Danielle will do that when she's back. Or if for some reason it's still in the calendar, please just ignore it. That meeting's not going to go ahead. All right, that's all for
Thank
that
you.
one.
Thanks for that, Tucci. Then on to the AU-based reconciliation update. So the ballot reconciliation has been completed for AU-based. The same thing for AU core, and in terms of the Australian Patient Summary ballot for work standard. So the notice of intent to ballot was approved by the FHIR working group on the 5th of November. So a couple of weeks ago. Quick reminder that we have the Melbourne Connected On coming in approximately 1.5 weeks' time. The event is now sold out. I think, Brett, is there anything you want to flag in here? I think if people are still on the fence, or if they decided not to go, I think it's just important that they let yourself and the administrators know, because those tickets may need to be reallocated to someone else. But yeah, over to you if there's anything else you want to flag.
No, that's about it. Yeah. So yeah, if you do have a ticket and need and can't make it, yeah, please do let us know, even at the last minute, because we will try and get people along. Yeah, do go on the wait list if you can attend. Obviously, if you're a local Melbourne person and flexible, you might get a last minute call to come through. So there might be some opportunity there. But I think at the moment we're pretty much full.
Thanks for that. I believe the track kickoffs, they're also scheduled for Monday, so this coming Monday, and people should have received confirmation from IGL7 with the details for the different track kickoffs. That's cool. And I think the agenda has also been finalized and it's available in Confluence if people want to go and have a look at it. So open actions that we have here. So the first one is sitting with you, Tucci. I think it's marked as complete. Do you want to just provide a quick update on, are we happy to move on to the open action ones?
I'll just quickly say, yes, that's done. It's been added to one of the existing FHIR IG examples, section empty reason. So that's in the IG. It's in the test repo as well. Yeah, that's it. Nothing more to say about that. Complete.
Thank you. Then we have two actions that are with HIT. Do you have an update, HIT, on that?
Yeah, they're in the backlog of discussion items, which yes, that they've been sort of lower priority items, so we've been dealing with others. So still awaiting.
Yeah. And the fourth action is with Tim Banaho from the agency. I don't think Tim's in the call. Just check. Yeah, he's not in the call. So, but I didn't get an update from him, so I might just chase him offline to see if this one has been done yet or not. So I'll make sure that gets updated before the next meeting. All right. Quick update on the block vote number 2. You would have seen, I think, an email from Danielle a couple of weeks ago on this one. So I'm not going to go into the details of that vote, but I think the idea here was just to provide an update on the outcome of the vote. So we had 10 affirmative votes on this one, no negative or abstain, which means the vote has passed electronically. So now we have a report back from the IPS project calls, and I'll hand over to Heath, who will take us through it.
I might just take control if that's all right, Ricardo.
Yep. Go for it.
Okay, so in Canberra, I think it was the 13th of November, we had a face-to-face session on the Thursday. It was a very long week that followed on from a couple of other events held by the agency and the Department of Health, and we also had a CDG on the Wednesday. On the Thursday, we had a really good attendance and with a wide range of people because of, I guess, where we were located and also having the CDG the day before, we had quite a number of clinicians and health informaticians from the day before, which was great. And that really worked well for our agenda, um, which went through a couple of items around patient summary, and I'll go into that a bit more. We also had a core session, which Marvin will report back on, and we also had a opportunity to hear what the agency is doing around the work in their Health Connect program. So, from a AU patient summary face-to-face perspective, we had a whole morning session before morning tea with Graham Grieve, who went through some of the issues around handling of IPS documents, in particular, what it means to receive an IPS. We've been emphasizing a fair bit around producing IPSs and AUPSs. We started looking at, okay, what do we do when we receive them? What does it mean to receive an AU patient summary rather than an IPS that's been brought in by an overseas tourist? What are we expected to do with that versus AUPS? And what capabilities can we actually have as associated with that? So Graham, as the FHIR PO, he has requested all international affiliates, including Australia, to be very clear in our localized IPS implementation guides, to be explicit about whether the instances that our implementation guide is basically saying is conformant and how that is compliant with IPS itself, the International Patient Summary. He then went through with this analysis around how our current implementation guide addresses that. And basically, he gave us the thumbs up that it was very, very clear in various sections in the in the AUPS. But what he wanted from us was to make it very, very clear in the first paragraph on the homepage. So that's something that we should consider as a project group in the near iteration. He then went on and started talking about handling an incoming IPS, what you can do with it. And so he went through talking about just displaying the narrative that's within that document, whether we display the individual entries within the document, and also if we get to the level of wanting to actually import that data so that we can reuse it within our systems. And usually that will be a select few of the resources, and even select few elements of within those resources rather than the entire document itself. He then went through some of the rules in detail about what our expectations are to display a narrative, some CSS, what do we do with multiple languages, some stuff around text links, and then the implications of rendering it ourselves. And then started to touch on the idea of importing data and how much harder that is obviously going to be. So the key thing here is for this group is for us to consider documenting what are the expectations when we're handling a document that we've received, whether it is an actual Australian patient summary, as per our IG that we've developed in this group, or a IPS that we've received, as in it's not an Australian patient summary document. It could be a Canadian one with their IG. It could be a New Zealand one with their IG. It could be a European one or a South American one or an American one, because they're actually creating an IG for America themselves as well. As part of the feedback around displaying narrative as a fallback, at least when we're receiving. He's saying that we should consider a recommendation in AUPS about the expectation that we should at least be able to display the narrative when we're receiving something from overseas. And we were also had some feedback from the clinicians in the room there that they really wanted to take this back to the CDG around importing information from an IPS. And I'm talking specifically around the IPS, not necessarily an Australian version of it, but the actual ones coming from overseas. And we'll consider the implications from a clinical perspective. So this answers the question, what is the difference between how do we know the difference between one that's come from an overseas and one that is actually compliant with an AUPS? So we actually came to a motion on this, and ultimately that passed. But that motion that passed was that there must be a clear and reliable way to identify an Australian patient summary by inspecting the document. And that's then work. So we agreed on that, but now we're working out what is the technical means to do that. And we've got an ongoing conversation in the background on Zilop on that if you are interested. So we also had a hot topic session. That was the second session for the day. I went out to basically ask for expressions of interest on what we should talk about in those hot topics, and we came up with one that was around again consuming. So I didn't know what Graham was actually going to present on at that point, so it just happened to actually flow in very nicely as it fell out for the day that we had this theme about handling and consuming patient summaries. So basically I talked about what it meant to use a patient summary, and about handling processing for clinical decision support, importing them, storing them, reusing the data within them. We had Landon and Andy and Grant provide some industry experiences and their areas of challenges in their implementations and their concerns about importing data from various clinical contexts. And then we went into a workshop that considered the values and other sort of considerations about consuming patient summary data content. And so this was a bit of the feedback that we got around the values. So there was some pretty obvious things that came back here. It was quite common themes. We had 66 responses, but they started to overlap quite nicely. So we can see, you know, the efficiency was key, not transcribing data, not re-entering data, keeping data up to date, having it up-to-date data available when I needed it. Some stuff about my name, etc. But we then went into the topics around, okay, what are the considerations? And we add our tables and we break this down into when we're actually importing patient data, when we're importing problems, when we're importing allergies, those key sections, and what were the issues associated with those. And again, some common themes started to come through. And on the right-hand side, I asked the question whether we should be consuming these particular sections or not. And we actually had a pretty clear consensus, especially at the top sections here, around that, yes, we should attempt to do so. So there was 11 out of 11 said we should be trying to consume our patient data. And 10 out of 11 suggests that we should do that for allergies and intolerances. And there's a couple of other sections there that they had the opportunity to talk about as well. But overall, as general, not individually, there was some common themes around duplicates, reconciliation, coding, provenance, and currency and accuracy. And for those that have been around for quite some time in this space of standardization, trying to deal with current medications and problems and allergies, these are themes that we've been trying to deal with for a very long time. So we concluded the session around this, just with a bit of a Menti around whether we should be consuming. So this was more at an individual level, whereas the results in the previous one was more at a table level. So again, we got very high relevance around that in that problems and allergies and tolerances section. So that was a very interesting morning on the 13th. So Marvin, did you want to take over? Or you want me to drive?
I don't mind who drives. I'll just continue talking. So one of the nice things that we have as a community is the ability for everybody to contribute and provide their feedback and give some input into the direction that we go with each release of AU Core. We started out right at the very beginning, 2003, just talking about what things should we include, and we had a whole list of things. And on the back of completing R2, we thought to ourselves, okay, well, what are we going to put in R3? And we asked the community to come back and give us some expressions of interest of some of the things that they would like to include. Brett talked about family member history. He said that would be a really good thing to include to allow us to capture relationships, hereditary conditions, and we would then be able to use that in preventative care and decision support. Stephen spoke about care plans and how care plans were essential for connected care coordination, and allowing us to do things like computable goals and shared planning. Corey was speaking about diagnostic report and how it would be good for us to have some way to group observations together, observations and binary reports, similar to how the OBR segment is used in HL7v2. Sanjeev was looking for a mechanism or inclusion of the meds administration profile so that we can actually capture when ordered meds are actually administered. Next slide, please. Charlotte spoke about medication dispensing, said it's a core piece of the clinical workflow and it generates really valuable clinical data. Liam was asking us to start to consider additional guidance around count and sort for search that will allow really clients to be able to filter and retrieve the most important information. For example, let's receive the latest vitals. And then finally, Ilya spoke about being able to write back into systems. For example, if you have a questionnaire response, and you've completed that, say you've got Smart Hub or something like that, and you want to be able to take the data that's there and write that back into the record. So that's really important for understanding who and did what and when, and provides you some clear auditable updates. Next slide, please. So after that, we asked people to basically take a look at those pitched items and say which one would be most valuable for you in the next 12 months. And as you can see on the screen, medication dispense, diagnostic report and care plans came out at the top 3, followed by the others. Next slide, please. So then we looked at what was in the AU Core backlog. So these are the items that are currently sitting in the backlog. So we've got a bunch of resources and data types that we potentially can profile. Next slide, please. The nice thing is that 5 of those items were included as part of the pitches that the expressions of interest brought forward. So family member history care plan. We had a couple that were new. So the search was new and also the write back was new. Next slide. So based on that, we asked people to discuss at their tables what they would like to do. And then each person got an individual vote. They went and placed them on the boards, and medication dispense came out at the top. So this is the top 10 of the items that people thought would be good to include in R3. Medication dispense, diagnostic report, followed by provenance, and so on going down. There were a few, if you go to the next slide, there were a few that people didn't want. So there were the ones, go ahead, Heath, you're right. I kind of condensed the slides. Yeah. So composition, which is already being included in patient summary, so no point in bringing that into core. People were saying coverage, gestational age and gravidity, and also the timing data type. People thought that wasn't really useful. So you can see we've got a nice interesting mix of items that people would like to include in AU Core R3. Now, come January, when we come back after the break, we will actually go through as a community group and decide what will be in R3, but this gives us a good feel for the sorts of things people are interested in. Next slide, please. And keep going. I'll just give a quick run through of something that the agency put together. So the agency are building this common foundation for interoperability. Next slide. And the core area that they were focused on for this was consumer record sharing services spec. So this is the mechanism that we would use, and we're uploading things to My Health Record, for example. Next slide. And they come up with a logical model for how we might package that information. So if you're going to send something to My Health Record, then My Health Record has some metadata around it that is really important for it to be able to track who did what and when. So things like who was the author, who was assembled it, who sent it across. Is there an encounter that surrounds it with it alongside the original data as well? The data could be a discharge summary, a shared health summary, or some other types of data. And they would wrap that in a kind of a logical data model. Next slide. And then they also went through and presented 3 different options of how we might represent that using FHIR constructs. So they took us through a number of options, and the community were able to give their feedback, and the agency then took that away and said, okay, we'll just, based on that feedback, we'll think about this a little bit more and then come back to the community at a later date. So that was a kind of a big, quick summary of what we did on the face-to-face in the afternoon. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Marvin and Heath. Doshi, you want to share your screen for the next one? And I think we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule, so that means we've given you an extra 5 minutes to take us through your stuff. So thank you. Over to you.
We did good, Marvin.
Yeah, very good.
I guess was there any questions from that report back? I know I'm on the chat, but if there are any questions, I guess there was a motion taken that some of the people on this call may not have been privy to, if there's any concerns about that, but yeah. No.
All right, thank you. I'll just confirm it that everyone can see my screen. AUPSR1 ballot update.
Yep. So.
All right. Okay, so we'll just quickly go through that. All right, we'll skip past the screen. We've seen it so many times. All right, so we've now completed ballot reconciliation. That's at 100%. Out of things we voted on, about 90% is already applied in Patient Summary FHIR IG, which is great. We are planning to publish the snapshot for Connectathon mid next week, and that's going to include all the normative changes from ballot, so we can test that in ballot. I think if you look at these, I think we can just skip through these because we've seen them so many times. And if there are any other questions, actually, are there any questions related to ballot status and reconciliation? No? All right. Okay, so we can go into the AFMM 1 discussion then. So Danielle's already introduced this at the last meeting, but we can just quickly walk through it so we're all, again, on the same page. So as I mentioned before, we finished resolving all ballot comments, and we are now preparing the snapshot for Connectathon. We still have a few meetings left. So over those few meetings, we'll keep refining the IG. So both in our regular patient summary calls, we also have at least one joint IPS call joint call with the IPS project team. So these joint calls are to work through some items that we ask for clarification before we can go for ballot for working standard in February. So this is all part of maturing our specification. So AFMM stands for Australian Fire Maturity Model, and it actually explains how we progress from the draft to towards working standards. So we've already been through the draft stage, then we've done the QA phase during ballot, and now we're going to the point where we can start assessing the artifacts against AFMM 1. So a lot of work's already gone into this. So we had connectathons, we had walkthroughs, we've agreed on design principles, we applied those in the IG. So now we've got a solid baseline in place. Next slide. So these are the maturity levels we are working with. Our goal for publication is AFMM 2 because that's the level where the spec is considered usable as a working standard. We are past the initial drafting stage, and we've already done the work that's needed to reach AFMM 1. So we've drafted the profiles, we've applied design principles, we had a walkthrough of those profiles. We tested through connectathons and testing events and gathered some early testing evidence. After this, the AFMM 2 will come, and that's where we'll have some stronger testing work and evidence behind us. So we are not quite there yet, but that's what we are working towards after Connectathon and after the ballot for working standard in February. But today we are focusing on AFMM 1. So at this level, each artifact, and by that we mean a profile or an actor definition, needs to meet two things. It needs to have no errors or warnings that are not accepted. So to produce FHIR IGs, we use a standard HL7 international tooling that includes automated QA checks. So the tooling produces a number of messages in the output. So these can be information messages, errors, or warnings. So quite often, these are not the actual errors or issues with the content. There are some flags created by tooling just for the editors to look at things and consider whether we meant something or not. So they're not necessarily errors with the artifact, but we just need to go through those together and confirm that why everything's in there and confirm that we are all comfortable with the state of it before we can assess that it meets AFMM1 criteria. The other requirement for AFMM1 is that the major development work is complete and artifacts are ready for implementation. In this case, in AFMM terminology, ready for implementation actually means ready for structure testing. Doesn't mean ready to go into a production system. So it just means that the artifacts are stable enough for connectathon testing and for us to really start assessing if it's fit for use for interoperability. And that's why we are today. And that's what we are aiming to confirm. So artifact is complete through community feedback and agreement. We've already satisfied that. We had discussions, connectathons, ballot reconciliation, and we are now at the second point of confirming the QA report and look at the result. Results are in the state that we can accept for AFMM endorsement. Before we go into that, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. In the QA report, an error is something that the IG publisher has found IG Publisher is the tooling we use to produce FHIR IGs. So the error is something that the IG Publisher has found and flagged as something that's not valid according to the FHIR specification or the rules that are specified in the profile. And the warning is a message by the IG Publisher where it thinks there might be something to address. It's not actually an error. It's just something to go through and have a look. It's also worth noting that the IG Publisher tooling evolves over time. So quite often we will have errors and warnings appear and disappear between different versions of the IG Publisher, which means they're not always content related. It can be IG Publisher error tooling or something that really sits outside of the FHIR IG. And as IG editors, we look at these QA report outputs all the time and make sure that they're all assessed. So where fixes are needed, we apply those. If it's something we think is acceptable or is inherited, we document that. Quite often we will use Zulip to confirm our position, which is what we've done in preparation for this walkthrough today. So today we'll be just asking the group to confirm that the remaining warnings and errors are acceptable and that we can endorse AFMM1 for these artifacts. There is quite a lot of content to go through. So if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the chat or stop me at any time and we can go into it in more detail. All right, so, So then this slide is actually QA status summary. So we have an overview by profile. Dark green tick means there is no errors, warnings outstanding. So either there are none or any existing errors, warnings have already been accepted by the work group. So this includes inherited errors and warnings. For example, we inherit a number of warnings from AU base. So these artifacts that are ticked with dark green have already met AFMM criteria, and we just need to endorse that as a group. Then we have a light green. These are the artifacts that have one or more errors and warnings that have been assessed by us, the editors, and they are recommended for acceptance today, and we'll go through them in more detail next. And then we have the orange tick, which means that some further work or some further clarification is needed. And lucky we don't have any orange ones in our QA output. All right, so the next slide. This slide is for information
Lucy, you're
only.
not sharing any slides.
Oh, sorry, really?
No, you are.
Yeah.
You are. We can see them.
I haven't seen any slide. Maybe it's me. I only see you. You're in person, but I haven't seen any slides.
So it's coming through.
Okay.
Yeah. Look for the tab at the top, Stephen.
All right. I should be sharing AFMM1 criteria for your information QA report.
Okay, it's probably just me because I'm not seeing any screen sharing, but never mind, ignore me.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, as I said, this is for information only. So this lists artifacts with warnings in QA report. All of these are inherited from AU base. And all of these have already been accepted by HL7AU FHIR group for all HL7AU IGs. As we can see, most of them are related to canonical version pinning warnings that have been discussed previously. I'm not sure, did people want me to go into or provide, I'll just provide a high overview of what this is related to. So a canonical is the stable URL for an artifact, for example, an extension or a value set, and the versions and releases of that artifact. Pinning means that you specify a version of the canonical in the IG. HL7AU IG's practice is not to pin. So we reference the base canonical URL without a version, and that tells the build to use the latest released versions of the artifact. The publisher sees multiple versions for the same canonical and words about potential matches, and we are getting these different versions through different dependencies on different IGs. As I said previously, this is expected and intentional and previously accepted by the very group. The next one, AU Patient Summary Pathology Result Observation, has 4 warnings related to observation.code binding to SPIA value sets. So this is, again, tooling generated warning. This happens because the observation code has additional bindings to SPIA value sets, but those value sets are marked as experimental in NCTS. There is already a tooling ticket to remove this experimental flag from the value set. These have been discussed and accepted in the FHIR group. We inherit that from AUBase. So there is nothing really for us to do, and it's not an issue or error with any of the patient summary artifacts. So I think no further action is required here. I think we as a group just acknowledge these inherited warnings from AUBase and move on. All right, so now we go into some errors and warnings that we are actually getting in the patient summary IG. So we present them. We have artifact shows the artifact name. QA report column shows the number of errors or warnings associated with the artifact. Then error warning shows the wording of error warning in the output, and then we have a summary of reason for exception. So the first one is the bundle, and I'll just say, because we only have limited time, I don't think we have time to go into look at the profile, AUPS profile, and look at the IPS profile, and look at all of that into detail. But if people are interested in that, please let us know, and we can organize a session to do that. Go and do like a complete analysis of QA report and why these are produced. But for this meeting now, we've just prepared this overall view of the QA report and why this can be accepted as an exception. All right, so the first one is error on the patient summary bundle. The IG report is reporting a mismatch in slicing rules at bundle.entry. So this happens because IPS and AUPS slice bundle.entry differently. IPS slices by type and profile, which allows multiple entries of the same resource type, including profiles that are not IPS profiles. In AUPS, we slice by type only. So this requires each entry to conform to AUPS profiles for that type. So we are stricter by design, and this has been confirmed by this group. So the IG publisher detects this error or different slicing approaches and reports this as a slice definition mismatch. So this is really about structure, tooling, assessing the structure of the profiles. It's not related to any of our content being incorrect in any way. Again, this difference is intentional. It's previously agreed by the group, and we accept this error as an approved exception. I might just pause there to ask if there are any questions or comments about this one before we go on to the next one.
So it's the variation between the IPS bundle structure or slicing compared to ours.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, which is intentional on our part because we don't want to allow any profiles that are not compliant with AUPS, whereas IPS will allow anything, really. All right. Okay, so we can move on to the next one. This one is related to AUPS condition. We are getting a warning on condition category that the value set, the AUPS condition category value set includes codes that are not allowed in the IPS profile. So what happens here is that AUPS extends the IPS value set. So the IPS value set includes problem, sorry, yeah, so the AUPS value set permits problem list item. The AUPS value set extends that to allow encounter diagnosis, which also comes from the core FHIR. So the bind, this is okay because both AUPS and IPS bind condition category as extensible. So which means that using additional concepts outside of the IPS value sets is allowed. Again, this is intentional design. We agreed as a group, reviewed this and agreed as a group, and it's not really an issue or an error with the artifact in the IG, and we recommend that this warning is accepted as an extension. Are there any questions about this one? Okay, let's go to the next one. Next one is AUPS medication statement. So we are getting one validation error on medication statement reason reference element, where the IPS target diagnostic report IPS is reported as a not valid constraint. So this error really happens because AUPS medication statement derives from AU core medication statement, which allows reason reference targets to AU core condition, observation, or AU-based diagnostic report. AUPS then adds IPS diagnostic report target to meet the IPS compatibility requirements. So the IG publisher can't really resolve this cross-IG constraint relationship. So it can't confirm that the IPS diagnostic report is a valid constraint and then flags this as an error. So this is a known tooling limitation. It's not a content defect. We confirmed that diagnostic report IPS is compatible with diagnostic report, IU-based diagnostic report. There is actually some work happening in the tooling space to allow this cross-IG validation, but it's not available just yet. So again, this is a tooling limitation, not an issue with our contact, and we recommend that this is accepted as an approved exception. Are there any questions about this one? Yes, Keith?
Are there any implications for instances related to this?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No. All right. Okay, so next one. AU patient summary, pathology result observation. We are getting one error say that our profile doesn't comply with the profile, with the IPS profile that we claim conformance to, and then it gives us 3 points, I guess, to break through. So this is really happening because of modeling differences, right? The message that the IG publisher gives us include missing constraint and then category discriminator, observation.category discriminator not found, and then no slice found for observation.value X. So again, these are really modeling differences. AUPS asserts IPS compliance, but it inherits modeling pattern from AU core. So the first point about the invariance, both IPS and AUPS enforce the same rules, but the expressions we use in the invariance or the FHIR parts are different. So the tooling can't really line them up and then flags them as missing. The issue or the point in observation.category Slicing, this is again using different discriminators between IPS and AUPS. IPS uses value pattern. AUPS inherits code and system discriminator from AU core, so the tooling can't match them really and reports this mismatch as an error. And then the last one on observation.value must support. IPS places must support on the 3 specific data types via slices. So it slices value X and in places must support on value string, value quantity, and value codable concept. AU patient summary must support on the value X element, meaning the must support and related obligations apply to all data types. But the tool looks at these slices, IPS slices, and because it can't find them in the AUPS, it reports them as missing. So these are all really acceptable as modeling differences, not a content defect. These profiles are fully compatible, and we recommend that this is accepted as an approved exception again. Yes, Heath?
Again, I'm worried about instances. So we've got an example in the IG that actually tests that and it's comes through as valid.
Yes, we've tested all of these. So these are all confirmed by testing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. So next one, we're getting an error on the patient profile. It doesn't comply with the IPS because it's missing slices for gender identity and personal pronouns. This has been confirmed as IPS internal dependency issue, the way they set up their own internal dependencies on the extension pack, on the ballot version of the extension spec, where AUPS is getting the latest using latest released version of the extension spec. This is not an issue for us only. This is an issue for all other IGs that have a dependencies on the IPS. So it's been confirmed with the IPS project team that they will publish a 201 errata to resolve this for all downstream IGs. So there is really nothing for us to do. And again, we are fully instances will comply with what AUPS instances will comply with IPS, which is confirmed by testing again. So nothing really for us to do here. It's out of our control. Any questions here? No? Okay, let's move on to the next one. AU patient summary smoking status. We are getting one error in the profile to say it doesn't comply with the IPS profile because there is a missing pattern on observation.code in our profile. Again, this is tooling generated. In the IPS, observation.code is fixed to a single line code. In AUPS, we inherit this from AU core. Actually, the same element has 2 codings, one for SNOMED CT and the other one for LOINC. And they're in different order. In the IPS profile, LOINC is listed first. In AUPS profile, SNOMED is listed first and LOINC is listed second. So the tooling checks these literally and flags the difference because AUPS has an extra coding and a different order. The meaning is the same. Both represent the same concept. We just added a code to support Australian implementation. So this really is just a modeling difference, not a content issue, and we recommend accepting this again as an exception. Any questions about this one? No? Okay, all right. So the next one, we are getting one error and one warning on the implementation guide. And this is what I mean when I say quite often we'll see different outputs and different errors and warnings reported in the QA output, because this only started happening a couple of weeks ago, really. So the warning is related to expression parameter fragment not being included anywhere in the IG. So this fragment actually documents the value set parameters in the IG that would be used when doing expand operation, for example, like SNOMED addition and things like that. We don't have any terminology resources in our IG. The profiles don't depend on this fragment. The warning is really about unused documented output and not about artifacts correctness or performance or anything like that. So we started getting this warning a couple of weeks ago. We tried to include the parameter. When we included the parameter, it caused an error, which is actually this one. Oh, sorry, I moved that. No definition could be found for URL value. So we decided to keep the warning. In meantime, error popped up, regardless of warning or the fragment being included or not included. So nothing to do with us. It's been confirmed by Graham Grieve in Zulip that this is Turing related. Graham said it'll be present for a while. He's not sure when he's going to be able to resolve this. So and nothing really for us to do. We wanted to keep the warning as well, as tooling is obviously changing around this. So we decided to keep the warning as well, not include this output, as we want to see where the tooling is going and to actually highlight any other potential issues with tooling around this. Brett, you have a comment or question?
Only just a comment that, yeah, we're seeing this in all the AU specs equally. So
and not just the AU
issue.
specs.
Not just the AU specs.
Other people are reporting this in Zulip as well. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so that's all. That's all the errors and warnings we are getting in the output. So every reported error warning has been reviewed. Each of the item is either a known tooling limitation or inherited previously accepted warning, or some intentional AUPS constraint that still remains compliant with FHIR rules and with the IPS. So before I move on to making a motion, I'll just pause for any other questions or comments.
That was huge. Well done.
It was, yes. Thank you.
Can't see anything in the chat, do you see?
All right. Okay. I'll then make a motion that we as a group endorse AFMM1 for all AU patient summary artifacts, accepting the documented exceptions as noted.
I'm happy to second that, Marvin.
Thank you. I'll launch the poll now. Yeah, getting pretty good numbers. Might give it another 5 seconds and close the poll, given that we have 75% of the people who already voted. Okay, I will now close the poll and count the results. Okay, so we have 21 affirmative votes and 3 abstain, which means the motion has passed. Thank you all, and thanks, Toshi. Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next step is to take this for FHIR group for endorsement, and then we'll incorporate it into the snapshot for the December Connectathon. Thank you. I think the next one, I'll just keep checking because I think we are going into change requests now, and I think next one might be mine as well.
It is.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So this is This proposal is to add CodeableConceptIPS to all AUPS Codable concept elements that are flagged as must support. We already do this where IPS flags the element as must support. And the gap is mainly where AUPS inherits must support on codable concept elements from AU core, for example, procedure reason. And there are other items that I have a slide later on with a list of elements this applies to. I'll just note that the groups already agreed on this for some profiles. So for example, AU patient summary encounter profile, which doesn't have an equivalent in the IPS. We already apply codable concept IPS to all codable concept elements. So this and as a result, I included this a screenshot from AUPS procedure profile where we have two different elements that are both codable concept, and we apply codable concept IPS to one, but we don't apply codable concept to the other. So this is really applying it consistently across AUPS. And if we don't do that, some elements in profile will have this IPS, codable concept IPS applied, and some don't, which will really be confusing for implementers. It means that the implementers are now facing with two different patterns with different rules. Which then creates inconsistencies and I think adds complexity. So the proposal is to apply this consistently to all must support elements of codable concept type. And also we recommend doing this as a default principle so that any new AU patient summary codable concept elements follow the same pattern. I've got, here is a list of the profiles that this applies to, and this, list of the elements that this applies to. And if we agree to the group, all of these would have codable concept IPS applied to them. Are there any questions or comments around this?
I'm probably just make a comment that there are obligations associated with these with this data type that we inherit from IPS as well. So effectively, by making this change, we're actually also inheriting the associated obligations associated with that particular data type. So off the top of my head, the obligations for producers will be that it'll be populate if known on coding and text, and handle for coding and text, and it'll be should display on the text.
Yes, that's correct.
Michael.
I'm trying to understand here. So are these then additional elements we've added must support in AUPS above IPS? And therefore we're changing this now because they weren't covered by IPS?
So some of these are the elements that where we inherit must support from AU core. For example, medication request, reason code, and medication statement. Yeah.
So there was no must support for these in IPS. So that's correct. Why yes. If they were must support in IPS, they've already got the codable concept IPS. But these are extras that we're adding, and therefore we need to change it because it wasn't covered by IPS.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Just trying to understand. Yep.
So wherever we inherit must support on a codable concept element from the IPS, we apply codable concept IPS. On top of that, we have some codable concept elements flagged as must support that we inherit from AU core, and we applied codable concept IPS to some of those, but not all of them. And here is the list of the elements where we haven't applied this rule. So this is either where we inherit must support from core or where we agreed to put must support on a codable concept element for the profiles that were created in patient summary, for example, composition, because there is no composition in AU core. So this is really now aligning the these constraints and aligning expectations and obligations for all of these elements for all actors across AU patient summary.
Yep. Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah, to me, it's a mixed bag of all of those scenarios. Like
Yeah.
composition section code, for example, we are inheriting, but obviously if not,
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So the consistency is the key for me. We have one way of doing it, and going forward as well.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mandy?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Just one element. If this is a patient summary and there should be an alert for a patient, does that go into the composition, or is it a different section that this would be included in?
There's a specific section for alerts under, it's called a flag resource, but there is a section called alerts in the composition.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Any other questions? All right, I'll then make a motion. Go back to the proposed disposition. So I'll motion to accept this change for the listed elements and to adopt the default principle as per the ticket resolution. Anyone would like to second?
Marvin,
Happy to second.
Thanks, Stephen.
Did you want to launch the poll, Ricardo? Thank you.
All right, should be on your screens now. Okay, we're over 72%. I'd give it another couple seconds and close this one.
I might just transition. Is that all right?
Yep.
Dushi, that I share?
Yes. Yeah, that's fine. I will.
All right, so I'll end the poll and I'll count the results. So we have 20 affirmative votes and we have 2 abstains, which means the motion has passed. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Tricia. Now up to you, Heath.
Okay, so the next one is 52836. So I think this was raised by Danielle off the top of my head. It's basically around the AUPS consumer obligation of should display is by default applied to the child elements of some of the data types. As an example, and hopefully this is somewhat readable for you, organization telecom system. So we're talking about these elements here, also value and use. I guess part of the problem with having should display on something like system, that will be effectively a URI, which is not really very friendly for a user to see these technical values on a screen. So we are basically, well, Danielle's proposal, it is Danielle's proposal that there should display obligation on non-human readable parts of the data types be removed. And that principle's already been applied in IPS and actually is the case in 2.00. Furthermore, that the should display obligation sits at the top element level and still applies. For example, in organization telecom, the actual telecom obligation of should display is there. And the impact of that would be that implementations now determine themselves how those elements get displayed rather than the technical data being expected to be displayed. as well. So if the implementer decides that they want to display use, then that's okay. And obviously, if they can choose to display value, well, that would be pretty obvious. But basically, we're just saying at this level is where we're going to put the display obligation on the consumer, and it's up to the consumer to display what they see fit. Furthermore, when there is an element that is for human readability, such as text in the case of human name, that it will also retain this should display. So in this particular example, what we'll be suggesting is that use, family, and given will have the should displays removed from them, but the text will retain it as well as the one at the top level. And why we're picking this one out is that there is actually guidance in IPS around that fact that text is actually something that should be populated on a regular basis. It could even be a shall. I can't remember off the top of my head. So the producers should or shall, can't remember, have to check what it says. In fact, it's probably sitting here. It is a shall populate if known. So it's a shall populate if known. So we're basically saying as a renderer, that's the one you should be displaying because it's already been put in the format specified by the producer, and hence that's the one that's preferred. Where does this get applied? So there are a number of resources where this is being applied. Patient, practitioner, role practitioner, organization related person, and it's mainly around telecom and family name data types with those particular elements. So you can see use, family, and given are the ones that we are looking to remove. System value and use are the ones that we're looking to remove from telecom. But we're retaining the text on the human name. The disposition, in summary, is that we adopt the principles that the elements should display obligations on sub-elements where the parent element obligation allows display presentation. It is up to the consuming system to display which parts are displayed when the element is displayed. There's a little bit of, but word for word, what is the in the Jira card? This is considered a persuasive with modification for a UPS patient and a UPS practitioner. So what we're talking about here is what the actual resolution is slightly different to the original proposal made by Danielle. For these two resources for human name, with regard to the use, given, and family, because they are actually inherited from patient IPS and practitioner. In other words, patient and practitioner profiles in the IPS currently have those obligations on use, given, and family. So we can't remove them for these two, but we can remove them for related persons. So just going back. So the name elements, related person, we can remove, but we can't remove them from these two. So that's, in summary, what is going to be the resolution for this at the moment. So use, given, and family will still be retained in patient and practitioner, but they will be removed in related person. So I'm looking for a motion. Well, I'll put the motion up that we accept this resolution as persuasive with modification as per above.
I'll second that. Steve Swinsburg.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So we're above 75%. Within a couple seconds.
Go ahead, Mandy, while we're finishing up.
I did make an affirmative motion on this, but just to make sure this was not going to cause a glitch later on when it's applied. So where we do things and where it's not, where we should to do things and where it's being removed, it's not going to cause further glitch down the implementation phase.
I think that's a segue to my action items. If I understand what you're suggesting, Mandy, is that we have an open card back to IPS themselves to remove those obligations on use given and family for patient and practitioner. So that is already been raised. It hasn't been triaged, and because of the published status of IPS, it will, I guess, have no official standing until some date in the future that we don't know. So this will be retained for now within AUPS to align with IPS, but if they choose to remove those obligations in the future, whether it's a 2.1 or a 2. I don't think it will be changed in an errata, so it will have to be a 2.1 kind of version of IPS to make that change. Then we can follow up afterwards. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. It's just with the coding, sometimes it's a nightmare if you are just taking it and it's a flow and then it kind of comes in as error and that becomes like a glitch in the system.
Yeah,
yeah.
so we're not talking about coding here. This
Okay.
is just about the telecom, how to
Okay.
display a telecom, how to display a human name data type. And basically we're trying to get some consistency around that, in particular around human name, that you should use the text if it's there. That's the should. That's the recommendation, is used what's in text, and then if there's no text, then it's up to the implementer to do what they want. But the main thing is we don't want to be forced to display these technical things like URIs that are very ugly that consumers and clinicians don't want to see.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. I'll just proceed with reading the results. So we've had 21 affirmative votes and 1 abstain, which means the motion has passed. I think on to the next topic and just doing a time check. So we've got 10 minutes left. I think it's with you, the next one too.
Did you capture Marvin's +1?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so 53115 must support obligation for mandatory reference sub-elements as shall populate. So recent change request 5211 updated the respective patient subject element must support obligations to shall populate. In other words, populate if known and capable of, given the element is mandatory. Based on the same reasoning, it would be expected that the obligation for the mandatory reference sub-elements of patient subject would also be shall populate. In other words, we've already made this decision on the subject level that it's going to be a shall populate. You have to be capable of populating this element because of the mandatory nature of that element. The sub-element of reference is also mandatory, but it's currently populate if known. So to be consistent with the decision we made up here, the proposal is that we also change this to shall populate, and hence you shall be capable of populating that if you know it. And the only time you can DAR it, but and what I mean by DAR is data absent reason. But in some circumstances, you need to demonstrate that you're capable of doing so. You can't always DAR it. So this applies to all resources listed here where there is a subject reference that is mandatory and must support. So this is the disposition, basically agreeing that we want to change the current shall populate if known on this subject reference to 1.1 and to populate. Yeah, so I'll make a motion for that as well.
May I have a second, please?
I will second that, Toshi.
Thanks, Toshi.
So I've just got a couple of slides as part of the what's next, Ricardo. So I'll keep sharing if you don't mind.
Yep, that's all good. All right, so we have more than 72% of votes on this one. I'll end the poll and read the results. So we have 21 affirmative and 1 abstain, which means the motion is passed as well. Thank you.
So 7 minutes? I'll try and take 2. Connectathon kickoffs, already mentioned it earlier, but in particular, the patient summary kickoff call is on Monday at 12 p.m. Melbourne time, 11 Brisbane time. Zoom meeting link there if you want to join. There's also an AU Core track kickoff that's later in the afternoon. I think it's the same Zoom meeting, is that right, Brent? Where you use it's the same meeting for all of them.
I'll check.
There's also a e-requesting kickoff on Monday and that's a typo. That's supposed to be the Smart App launch track. So if you want more details of those other tracks, then you can go to the Connectathon page. Just some chat.fire.org polls that have been out and about. In particular, there's one about test data for the Connectathon. I'm having a bit of a planning meeting on that this afternoon. I've actually sent out explicit invites to those that have responded to the poll. If you want to join, please, there is a link here to join that meeting. Hopefully it will work. Otherwise, try and contact me on Zulip on that particular chat if you want to come in and have a chat with us about test data. What we're trying to do is get coverage for systems that are testing at the Connectathon so that we can improve the AFMM levels of the AUPS profiles. And we're looking for vendors to help us with that. We've put a lot of effort into creating test data, but what we need to work out is how do we get that test data into your system so that we can actually use Inferno to do the testing and reporting of this to try and do this efficiently without too much manual effort. The other one is the Hot Topics breakout that I'm going to be holding at the Melbourne Connectathon as well. So that's an expression of interest for that particular one. And what are these other ones? Just the fact that this is the identifying an Australian patient summary chat that's going on, and the AUPS track, just basically information about the track on that Zulip poll as well. So that's me. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thanks, Heath. So I'll just run through the next couple of slides very quickly. So we've already agreed after the poll that the next meeting will happen on the 19th of December, and there's some kind of relevant links to the meeting. If we go to the next slide, please. So just a recap on the timeline we're pursuing. So the next big milestone that's ahead of us, as we've already mentioned a couple of times, is the Connectathon, which will happen on the 9th and 10th of December, and there's a few other milestones that will happen after that, but the big thing we're now working towards is the Connectathon. Next slide, thank you. Oh, it's the last one. So yeah, three minutes to spare. So thanks everybody for your participation. It's great to have you here, and thanks to all the presenters for taking us through the huge amount of content we had to go through today. So thank you all, and see you next time or at the Connectathon if you're there.
Just before we close off, Ricardo, I think we might have skipped over my report back on the IPS calls. I don't know if that was deliberate or we just accidentally do that. Seeing we've got 3 minutes, do you want me to do that?
We can. Yeah, okay. Yep. Do you want me to put this slide on the screen, or do you have it there?
I've got it. I'm trying to find it. It's all the way back.
I can put it up if you want.
If you've got it,
yeah.
I don't know. It must have been hidden or something. Oh no, here we go.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay. So for those that don't know, I'll try and get this done in 2 minutes. HL7 IPS calls have been something I've been attending at midnight once a week. And we've been able to get those changed to a more friendly time because it actually got really unfriendly. It ended up about 2 a.m. in the morning because of our time shifts. Because we went to daylight saving, but they went off daylight saving. So we actually had a 2-hour time shift. So they're actually now doing a fortnightly one for Australia to attend, and then they do the other fortnight for Europeans to attend. So they've actually been very nice to accommodate us. We had a meeting on the 19th where we went through to clarify guidance around no known medications. We had made a decision within this group that we were going to go ahead with the use of no known current medicines in a medication statement. So I basically put that back to them to say, this is what we're doing. They said, yep, that seems okay. Also, what was happening was that the pharmacy working group had also come up with a position that medication statement was not really a recommended way of doing it, but it's okay to do for now because that's how things are being done. But they haven't actually indicated what is a recommended way of doing it either. So there's a bit of an issue there. And Stephen's been actually running that along the way as well. So maybe we'll get some better guidance, but keep in mind, this is R6 guidance. It's not R4 guidance. As a result, there is some actions on IPS now that they will consider the same approach that Australia has actually suggested and put that back into the IPS. But as I indicated before, that's likely to be quite some time, at least a year, probably. But what it has actually done is it's actually stimulated a whole heap of extra discussion. So they had another call the next day, well, actually the same day our time, but which was at the European time, and they had a whole meeting basically themselves talking about the issues around this. So it's actually really stimulated quite a bit of debate throughout HL7 in general. 26th, so this week, minutes are available. We went through some clarification issues that we've raised around entered in error on the use of off the top of my head, I have forgotten. I think it's condition. Anyway, there's basically, we don't want entries with entered in error in IPSs. So there's actually comments to that fact, but not anything normative. So we've indicated, we've pointed this out, and they've agreed that they will actually remove entered in error in some of the value sets associated with the status elements on those particular resources. Similarly, we wanted some clarification around some comments that kind of alluded to the fact that we should not be using the medication code approach unless all we've got is a code. And again, that stimulated some interesting conversation. Now we're looking at wordsmithing an entire paragraph of code. So that's ongoing. So that's my quick status. The next meeting is on the 10th of December, which is the same day as second day of Connectathon. So we've moved that at 9 o'clock time to 8 o'clock so that people like myself and Stephen can attend before we jump off into Connectathon land. And we'll be talking about another one of our items that is about the multiple cardinality. So what does an obligation of shall populate or shall handle mean when we've got multiple cardinality on elements such as identifier and names and things like that? Do we have to provide every name we know, every identifier we know? How do we handle codes that are coming from international? So it's a US medication code, but we don't know about that in an IPS, but we're obligated to handle it. So there's issues around that. So I must say, those that are attending these calls, it's great to have your backup. I'm usually the lone person from this side of the ditch. And to have your support is really appreciated at these meetings that are more friendly to us all.
Heath, a quick response to your questions about what is the preferred approach. I actually had some rigorous discussion with Graham Grief on that. I actually recommended a new resource to be developed for this particular purpose that will cover not just known medications, but also allergy intolerance and also known conditions as well. But Graham said that that ship has sailed, and that's the reason why there is not a preferred approach. The preferred approach is to have a specific file resource to be created for that. But at the interim, in the absence of anything better, then we settle on making some modifications to the current medication statement to support what is being needed. And I have raised a number of issues against the medication statement that needs to be addressed before we can actually use the medication statement for this purpose to a sort of a better degrees of clinical and semantic clarity.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks for pursuing that on that side of it as well. So thank you.
You're welcome, and I'm very happy that given that I've told them that I won't do anything sort of earlier than 6 a.m. our time, so they have to make the change, and it's very good that I can attend as well.
All right. Anything else, Heath, or
no?
You're good? Okay. All right. This is it now. Thank you all, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.